So another week has passed by and more scandal is bubbling up to the surface in relation to Garda Síochána. A report has came out this week to suggest that, let's just say, some members of the force are demotivated and don't have a propensity to do certain types of jobs, and they're almost protected by fear that their superiors can't go and take a case against them because of the Garda Relations Unit. They will jump all over them. So this morning, I'm very happy and fortunate, I suppose, to be joined by an ex-Garda, Mr. John Wilson, to discuss said events. John, how are you?
I'm very well, Rick. It's been a very quiet week, as you're aware. Nothing really happened over the last week or so.
The tumbleweeds, John, the tumbleweeds are everywhere. But I have a feeling, no, I don't think, but I have a feeling this is all about the change here. I want to look at this report and policing in general, because I have noticed and covered, let's just say, some very sloppy practices in relation to certain members of Gardaí, and also some questionable practices in relation to some members of Gardaí that I have documented. They're on video, they're on this channel. Have a scan back over the last few weeks if you're new to the channel, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I want to kick the ball off, or I want to kick things off here this morning with this shocking revelation or headline that has came out. Lack of sanctions for poor performance led to some Gardaí deliberately avoiding traffic offences. So Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, who's not going to be in his job for much longer, has described the findings as shocking and disturbing. Do you think he was shocked? Do you think he maybe lost a few nights' sleep over this one, or is it all just sound bites from our Drew?
Well, the Commissioner said that he was shocked when he got the report, and he's shocked by the findings of the report. I'm not shocked. I mean, it's very, very important that Gardaí have a basic knowledge of the law. I know, but we're going to get on to that later. Mm-hmm. Apathy is destroying the organisation. Gardaí, a guard is not rewarded by the amount of work that he or she does, and the amount of work you do will get you into more trouble. The less you do, the safer you are within the organisation, the more secure your job is. Gardaí, I mean, the number of vexatious complaints that Gardaí have to deal with is also shocking. Gardaí must be held to account, of course. That's a no-brainer. But I'd say one of the main reasons for this apathy and for these guards just skiving and kind of not doing the job that they've been well paid to do is the fact that they're afraid to do their job because they're going to be complained about. I'm not saying that that's not an excuse. But I know a lot of guards that are approaching retirement, and they're doing damn all. They're within a year, 18 months of retirement, and they're just biding their time to get out. They're not doing anything. They are reactive. I mean, these people are reactive. They're not proactive, and that's a very, very ominous sign for the future of Garda Síochána if members are going to be just reactive and not proactive. Because the role of a member of Garda Síochána is to enforce the laws of the land, and that means going out and getting their hands dirty. And taking on the most vilest people in our society. That's not being done. There are too many guards kind of picking the low-hanging fruit because it's the handiest thing to do. They're taking the easiest option. Unfortunately, it's a damning report. Now, the Commissioner said he was shocked, but I wasn't shocked. When I joined in Garda Síochána over 40 years ago, it was a vocation. Now it's merely a job. Supervisors have been criticised in this report as well, but it's easy criticising sergeants and inspectors. The reality is, when I was a young guard, when I started off on Pearse Street back in early 1983, I was on the beat, and our sergeants, we had two sergeants around the unit I was in Pearse Street, and they went out, and if I was sent out on a beat, I had to stay on the beat, and I was checked several times throughout my 8-hour shift. Sergeant Fergus Power and Sergeant Ollie Power and Sergeant Fergus Doggett, they were the two section sergeants on my unit. And they would check us. They would check me several times during the shift. And when I received an instruction from a sergeant, I obeyed it without question. Now it's gone to a stage where sergeants are afraid to order their subordinates around, or to give them instructions, to give them orders about what to do, because If the guard doesn't like what he or she is being told, they may start saying that they may make an allegation of bullying against the sergeant. That's the way it's gone. So sergeants now are just kind of given instructions, and if the guards obey the instructions, if they obey the instructions or don't obey the instructions, so what, you know? There is no discipline. Discipline is broken down within an Garda Síochána. And Garda Síochána is meant to be a disciplined force. It's not a disciplined force. This is a damning report, but I for one, unlike Andrew Harris, I'm not shocked by it.
You're describing as well, in any type of business or organization, the worst possible setup that, number one, apathy sets in among the workforce, among the personnel, and number two, that apathy goes unchecked, so it turns into almost a culture, or it's a rot, yes, that spreads and infects more and more people. And there's nothing worse for productivity than being demotivated or being, you know, depressed or being disillusioned. So if you're in a job where you're feeling, you look around and you think, I'm not being valued, I'm not being supported properly, maybe not being trained properly, I'm not being managed properly, okay? And then your head goes down and you get apathetical about it, and then you realize that no one really has any power to do anything about it because it means more trouble for that person. Then it fosters that apathy. I think it sets in like a rot also, and it's infectious. If you've ever been probably have been in the past among certain groups of people, and there's you know, it's a toxic environment, you know, it's very difficult to escape that unscathed. You'll start to snipe and you'll start to backbite and you'll start to slack off, probably because everybody else is doing it over time. Of course, not everybody's going to do that. But what I mean is it's a toxic culture, and it's a very, very, very dangerous culture, I would say, to be in place with An Garda Síochána, because they're supposed to be out there guarding the peace.
It's not just in roads policing. Now, this report focused on roads policing in Ireland. This is throughout An Garda Síochána. An Garda Síochána is now a woke mess. It's all about feelings, and Gardaí are just doing their own. A lot of Gardaí are just doing their own thing. The supervision is dire, apparently, in a lot of areas in Garda Síochána. You have Gardaí working you have some very, very, very hard working members of Garda Síochána, very, very hard working members of Garda Síochána. Even in the same station, you could have a few guards kind of carrying out their duties wholeheartedly, give them 100% of their dedication to An Garda Síochána. There will be other members of Garda Síochána on the same unit doing sweet FA, and they'll both be getting the same pay at the end of the week. And at the end of the month, that breeds resentment.
That breeds resentment then among the hard workers, because it's very difficult again to remain motivated when you're sitting busting your ass on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and then you look across the tea or the communal area, maybe where you're all sitting having a break or doing whatever you're doing, and you're thinking there's a group sitting at that table who do a quarter of what I'm doing, and they're getting away with it, and they're walking home at the end of the month with the same amount of money. It's very difficult to remain motivated when you see that. Literally, it's almost like rubbing your nose in it.
That's always been a problem within a Garda Síochána. And the more a guard works, the more complaints will be made about that guard. And Garda management do not like complaints being made about members of their force. That's quite simple. And being a lazy bastard, to be honest with you, is not an impediment to getting promotion within a Garda Síochána. It's who you know and who you're connected to. That's always been the way that An Garda Síochána has operated in relation to promotion. Now, this is a damning report. It's a wake-up call. I don't know what the incoming commissioner is going to do about it. But yeah, there are too many guards. They are just walking around and doing very, very little. They're not earning their pay, that's for sure. But there are the guards that will go in and work diligently for the 8 hours or 12 hours, 10 hours or whatever they're working. They will work very, very hard and give their all. And they are not being rewarded. They are not being rewarded.
That's I'll move on to the next piece of this, generally speaking here. So it's not saying that obviously everybody's guilty of this, but certainly there are pockets, as you've described, or certain elements within the force that are apathetic, lazy, and not pulling their weight. So a lack of sanctions for poor performance and absence of effective management led to this to take root, which is really what we've been talking about before I brought this slide up here. Some roads policing units, so this is just looking at roads policing here, have deliberately avoided traffic offences. An independent review said there were also resource issues leading to some Gardaí not being able to access training to drive roads policing cars, which contributed to a lack of productivity. The Crowe Report did not uncover evidence of a systematic and organised culture of work avoidance, but found a minority of Gardaí were, quote, able to get away with, unquote, being unproductive. Well, that's kind of, you're pretty much saying that back in the day, back in 1983, back when you were in Pierce Street, that would have been unthinkable that this report could have been published back in the 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s.
Not a chance. I'll give you an example. Let's say there are two guards are sent out one night to patrol, and the guards are sent to two different beats. One guard is a diligent guard. He's an absolutely diligent guard. The other guy's a lazy sod. And the diligent guard goes off and he patrols his beat. The other guy heads off to his beat and goes into it. He finds an apartment to hide in for the shift. And there are two guys come along and they want to break into a shop on the premises that the diligent guard is patrolling. And every time they approach the shop, they see the guard walking towards them because he's patrolling diligently. So they move off into the neighbouring beat where the lazy guard was sent, and he's at this time in an apartment upstairs, drinking tea and watching television. So anyhow, it's approaching break time, and the lazy guard decides, you know what, it's time to go back to the station for my break. So he walks out of the apartment that he's been hiding in, and by Christ, he walks into the two boys coming out of the shop after breaking into the shop, and they're carrying the property, and he arrests them. And he calls the patrol car, and the patrol car arrives, and he conveys the two scumbags back to the Garda station. The guard that has been patrolling diligently all night goes back in his break, and goes in, and the other guy is there with the two prisoners. Now, who do Garda management really kind of appreciate more? The guard that was out flipping working diligently, or the lazy bastard who kind of just stumbled into the two prisoners? The lazy guard. You know, the next morning at a meeting, it'll be kind of, you know, the lazy guard will be praised by Garda management because he caught these two people. You know, we caught these two scumbags leaving the premises with the property. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. Hard work is not rewarded within Garda Síochána. It's not rewarded. That's why there's so much apathy. That's why there are so many guards that are praying for the retirement date. And that's why there are so many other guards who couldn't be bothered. They'll go out there and they'll do a bit of work. You know, they will do the bare minimum work they have to do with no consequences. A hard-working guard and a lazy bastard get the same wages at the end of the week.
That is the worst environment to be in. And I'm speaking from an experience. I've worked in different companies. I've worked for different organizations, and the worst environment to be in is when the effort that you put in to your job or the amount of professionalism that you put in is not directly correlated to your remuneration, or worse still, someone that's doing less or half of what you do in an unprofessional manner is coming out at the end of the month with the same as you are. That is the most demotivational environment, I believe personally, to be in, and I've been in several like that in the past, and I've had to get out.
Yeah, but concentrating just specifically on roads policing. Guards, there are some, you'll hear even in our own area, there's some guard, he'd be, oh God almighty, he's an awful individual. He won't let you away with anything. Everywhere you go, he's there doing a speed check, all right? Or he's stopping you for stopping people and demanding their insurance and their driver's license and whatever. You know, dedicated members of Garda Síochána are not looked upon very favorably by many members of the public because they're out there doing their job. They're out there doing what they're paid to do. And they will also, you know, they will also revere, oh God, Garda so-and-so, he'd never do anything. He's a great guy, like he'll always talk to you, and he'd never prosecute you for anything. Like that's the Irish mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Irish people want laws, but they want them enforced. You know, the laws should always apply to somebody else, not to them. You know what I mean? You know, oh no, that old bastard, he caught me. I was only doing 5 kilometres over the speed limit. But the other guard there, that Garda Wilson's an awful bastard. But Garda Moan, he's a lovely fella. He wouldn't stop you at all. He wouldn't prosecute you for anything. That's
I
the
think
attitude.
that is the problem. You know, they want to see strict enforcement of the law, but not.
But not on that. Oh no.
But not me. Leave me out of this. But this
laws for thee, but not for me.
Exactly. Well, this is a perfect example of it. Notably as well here, it was commissioned. This Crowe report, the so-called Crowe report, was commissioned by Harris after he received confidential correspondence in June 2023. So that's just over 2 years ago, John, which raised concerns about road policing units with over 100 Gardaí spoken to by consultants. So has it taken 2 years for them to get to this point that they have to have that little brochure, that little report printed out, probably bound up nicely, landing on the desk of Drew Harris? Now he's describing his shock and disturbance at the content. Does it take 2 years to come to a conclusion like this?
We hear a lot about the Garda family. Guards don't like talking. They don't like revealing secrets from within the organization. I know that very, very well. Obviously, a couple of guards, I'd say it's more than one guard, came forward and said, we're here, we're working hard, and our colleagues working in the same units.
There's an expression.
I'm not doing anything.
There's an expression back in the days of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, where special branch were under investigation or asked to give accounts for certain crimes or allegations of collusion, maybe that were applied to certain murders or certain events. They employed a technique that they described as the slow waltz. So if they were bound over to provide information or provide cases or evidence, they would do it in some cases, but on a very slow drip fed manner and as convoluted a way as possible. I think that's maybe what I'm not talking about anything other than Garda Síochána here, but let's just say they maybe weren't quick in coming forward with the facts and figures that were needed.
Well, listen, it's very important. You cannot judge the work of a member of Garda Síochána in the same way that you'll judge somebody working in a factory manufacturing widgets. You can't do that, because if you do that, then you're going to that approach would lead to oppressive policing, which we can't have. But truly, to God Almighty, I mean, if a guard goes out on the beat, he or she is going to be able to detect some crime or offence during their tour of duty. I'm not saying that you have to put quotas on guards, but you can't do that. I mean, that would lead to oppressive policing. We none of us want that. But for God Almighty's sake, even in the quietest station in rural Ireland, a member of Garda Síochána should be able to detect at least one offence during their tour of duty.
You would hope.
It's not rocket science.
No,
but
it's not.
But we're at a stage now where apathy has infected in Garda Síochána.
And it's spreading.
I mean, don't get me wrong, and I'm not damning everybody, as I've alluded earlier on. There are some fantastic members from Garda Síochána, some fantastic hard-working men and women in Garda Síochána that we all should be very, very proud of. But there's also a lot of deadwood. Yeah. And they're both getting paid the same money. They're both getting paid the same wages. Those that work diligently and those that do damn all are getting the same pay. And there's no discipline. When I was there, I called everybody sore. In my early days, my God Almighty, now you look at these programs, Gov and this, I call Sergeant sore, for God's sake. Now it's Mickey, Joe and Mary. There's no discipline. There is no discipline in a Garda.
No respect.
I mean, you have rank and file guards. We'll almost call the superintendent Mickey Joe. There's no sore. It's just I'm not saying I want a paramilitary police service or police force like they have in the UK, but for God's sake,
just a bit of
if we can't rely on Garda Síochána to enforce the laws of the land, then we're in a very, very bad place. We're in a worse place than any of us could have imagined. I mean, for God's sake, you know what I mean? For God's sake, is that too much to expect?
Not really. But again, cultures take time to develop. Okay, a positive work culture can take time to bed in. A negative work culture can take time to bed in. And I think what we're seeing is the point that we're at now is a result of years and years and years of progressively less and less discipline, disenfranchisement, disillusionment. You know, people are downhearted, their apathy setting in, there's no fear of consequences. And then all of a sudden, bang, here we are in August of 2025, and we're discussing this now. It's being discussed nationally. This woman here as well, by the way, she's the assistant commissioner for roads policing. Now that's a strange photograph of her there. She maybe is adjusting her glasses, or she's
wearing
maybe
sunglasses.
I don't know what she's wearing, but she's maybe rubbing her temples because of the headaches that this is going to cause her. So again, this is just another report saying some Gardaí are tasked with roads policing duties are unproductive and appear to be demotivated and unconcerned. I'm just paraphrasing this here. So the Crowe Report has said members who were disinterested got away with behaviour to the frustration of their colleagues, supervisors and managers. The government recently introduced new speed laws, and Drew Harris has mandated that frontline Gardaí have at least 30 minutes per shift dedicated to road policing. Well, again, and I'm no expert on policing here, but I would say with the amount of violent crime that we have and the amount of assaults and abuses that are going on and people trafficking and every other conceivable offence under the sun, I would have thought that policing a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, for half an hour per shift, that's a lot of policing time. If you roll it all up over the course of a day across all the guards in Ireland, that's a lot of policing time that's dedicated to sitting trying to get someone doing 35 in a 30 zone.
Most of the speed detection is done by automation. It's done by vans. All right. Occasionally, you'll see guards out with the machine. It used to be called the hairdryer, but it's a much more sophisticated machine now than it was in my day. Nobody likes being caught for speeding. I mean, listen, the accelerator is my favorite pedal on the car as well. I'm not talking to you as some kind of a saint, but I've had to I too have to keep an eye on my speed, and with God's help, I have never received a speeding ticket yet, and I'm in my early 60s, as you know. Or as you reminded me last Wednesday or last Friday, I'm getting old. But this is a broader. I mean, this report, it's only skimmed the surface. There's a much bigger problem here. Gardaí have realised and have known for an awful long time that the more work you do, the more complaints you're going to be subjected to, and we have to look at the Garda complaints, the complaint system as well. And anybody that's found to have made a malicious complaint, a member of a Garda Síochána, should be hammered in the courts, should face a stiff fine and a stiff prison sentence. That has to happen, because that's one of the reasons for the apathy that has crept into Garda Síochána over the last, I would say it's 10, 15 years. Oh, actually longer than that, because the Garda complaints system is there a long time, and it's always been abused. It was abused in my time. I was subjected to some horrendous malicious complaints during my time as a member of Garda Síochána in Dublin. The more you work, the harder you work, the more complaints that are going to be made against you. That's always been the way that it is. And policing, being a member of Garda Síochána, right? It's a job. You can either do it or you can't do it. And that's, as a police officer, you can either do the job or you can't do the job. It's not bloody rocket science. A member of Garda Síochána is there to enforce the laws of the land. If he or she cannot do that, then they should feck off and get a job somewhere else. But we have to take into consideration the fact that the more complaints that are made about you, Garda management do not like complaints being made about guards. Superintendent would rather if there were no complaints made about his officers, and that they were doing, and that they were doing damn all. They were just kind of doing enough to survive, enforcing, kind of doing enough work to keep ticking over. But that's not good enough. We need excellence in the Garda Síochána. We need a proper disciplined force. We need members of the Garda Síochána, men and women, going out there for 8 or 10 hours a day, giving their all and working to the best of their ability for each of those hours that they are working. What we are witnessing at the moment is shameful. It is shameful.
And the incentivized as well. There needs to be incentives. You know, it's like the most productive people in the world, I believe, are the ones that are remunerated directly proportionally to the amount of effort and work and results and qualification. If you want to look at it, I know it's not a sales force, but if you look at a sales force, so someone that's gets paid commission per sale versus a flat rate. So if you work in a car dealership and you're on a flat salary, irrespective of how many cars you sell every month, okay? So if you sell 5, you get 10 grand a year. If I sell 20, I get 10 grand a year. There's no motivation for me to be doing more sales because I'm going to get paid the same amount. Now, granted, that'll be reviewed and, you know, your boss will bring in saying you need to up your game a little bit. But what I mean is, if I'm paid per sale, for example, and I'm highly motivated and I realize the amount of money that I take home at the end of each month is directly related to the amount of effort that I'm putting in and my level of professionalism and the amount of qualifications that I have and my reputation, etc., that's going to make for a much more upbeat force because even in the best of times, even if it is a vocation for you, you're going to have really crappy days. You're going to have really bad days. You're going to have stuff going on in your personal life. You maybe don't want to show up for your shift. All I would say is it's probably exacerbated even more with this culture of doing the bare minimum and not swinging the lead and seeing other people getting away with it. And it's this round and round, John, of apathy and lack of consequences. And then it's a downward spiral is what I'm trying to say.
How about earning the pay they're getting already? Incentivizing guards would be a slippery road to go down, a slippery slope to go down, because it will lead to abuses. And if you're incentivizing guards,
I didn't mean, by the way, you get an extra bonus if you arrest or you apprehend or you issue so many speeding tickets. Not really that way, but I suppose you could say that if let's say you and I are both, constables. We've just started off and we do our first year. We do our first year together in the Guards and we both have the same sergeant. At the end of a year, for example, the amount, someone that has knowledge of the amount of effort and work that you put in, are you timely and you're, showing up for your shifts, the amount of complaints that you have against you, all that sort of thing, that should be looked at the end of each year. And depending on my performance versus your performance, someone that actually does their shift every day, works to the best of their ability versus someone that does the bare minimum, there should be some kind of alteration there rather than having a flat. I'm just saying, rather than having a flat salary, I should be like, okay, well, you go up an extra spinal point and you either stay where you are or you go down one. I don't know. I'm just saying this getting away with doing nothing is terrible.
No, I understand what you're saying, but we need, first of all, we need to put in place a fair promotion system in Garda Síochána. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist.
Suppose that's what I was trying to vocalize.
Fairness.
A fair promotion system.
A fair promotion system. Because the hard workers are very often left behind because the record will show that there were so many complaints made against them or whatever, and they want just quiet people there. They want people there that are not going to rock the boat, that are just going to nod like obedient donkeys. The hardest workers should be rewarded with promotion. And the lazy sods and the lazy sods should either be kicked out or not rewarded.
I think you've just vocalized perfectly what I was trying to say. That they need to be the hard workers should be incentivized with the realistic proposition of a merit-based promotion, and the wasters and the people that are doing the bare minimum or nothing or shirking their duties should be bucked out or put on a fast track out of the force.
And as we speak, a lazy guard with connections will achieve much more within the Garda Síochána than a hard-working, conscientious member of Garda Síochána. That's the reality.
With no connections.
Right? And that's a big reason for the apathy that exists. In 1989, I joined on September the 22nd, 1982. But in 1989, how will I describe them without sounding offensive? The geniuses in the Department of Justice and in the Phoenix Park decided that they were going to introduce a new recruitment system. And they wanted to encourage young men and young women with degrees to become members of An Garda Síochána. And they were promised that if they join An Garda Síochána, they would be fast-tracked. They would achieve greatness. They would be fast-tracked for promotion. And a lot of young men and women joined An Garda Síochána around that time and in the following couple of years. And very intelligent people with degrees. But they quickly realized that they were sold a lie, they were lied to, and that the who you know system still operated in the same way that it has operated since the foundation of An Garda Síochána back in, was it 1927? It's who you know determines if you get promoted or not within An Garda Síochána. It's not what you know. That's the reality, and that's still there. That still exists today. But if we can't depend on our national police force to enforce the laws of the land, we're in a very dark place in this country. And it's much worse. It's much worse than this report has outlined. This is not just in roads policing. This is throughout the organisation as a whole.
And I suppose we could say, just even in conclusion to this, you know, if there was ever a time that law and order, or the establishment of law and order, or the law applied equally to all people with integrity and with determination and motivation, if there was ever a time that was needed, that time is right now. But it's fair to say that the recruitment levels are nowhere close to what they need to be. The apathy has set in like a rot across many areas and across many divisions, and public perception of An Garda Síochána, I don't know if there's been a poll done on that or whatnot, but generally speaking, there's a lot more people getting more disgruntled and disillusioned with the Guards maybe again than there were back in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s.
And not just the usual suspects. When I joined An Garda Síochána, we were taught to enforce the laws of the land without fear, favour, malice or ill will. We were told to enforce the laws of the land equally. Now, I realised soon afterwards that was a fairy tale. That lecture should have started once upon a time, like all good fairy tales start. But there are some very, very good, great men and women in An Garda Síochána today. But the leadership is atrocious. The leadership is atrocious. Now, the sergeant's role, the sergeant is the immediate supervisor. A sergeant's role is to send the Gardaí under his or her control out to do their job. And that sergeant's role is to supervise those guards to ensure that they comply with the directions that they're given to do.
And is that
no, that's not happening. It's kind of, I mean, when I was given an instruction by a sergeant, I went out and I did what I was told. Now, when a sergeant gives an instruction, that's seen as kind of it's you know, a take it or leave. And you know, the guards now see those instructions as optional, as a take it or leave it situation, which is absolutely shameful. And of course, the sergeants themselves are thinking, well, why should I stand up to this fella? Because you know, it'll cause me a lot of grief, and I want to be liked. I want to be liked. I want to be everybody's friend. I don't want this guard kind of hating me or the other guards not liking me. I want to be their friend. That attitude has ultimately led us to where we are today. This report only refers to roads policing, but it's way deeper. You know, the rot is much deeper than that.
Well, I appreciate you shedding some light on this particular report this morning, because obviously it's just breaking news this week. But undoubtedly, as Harris moves over, he quits his position imminently and his replacement comes in. I don't know whether or not they'll keep digging on what's going on. Sorry for such first time I've ever sneezed making a report. Maybe it's an allergy to the findings of this report. Last time we spoke, it was your dog going mad. Now it's my nose.
She's very quiet today.
She's been very quiet today. It's a very somber conversation, but I do appreciate your time hopping on here this morning. And please forward this this discussion. If you're listening to it, cut and paste the link, drop it into Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, send it out. Let people see what's actually happening, what the actual official findings are, which is just a confirmation really of what many people knew for a very, very long time. So John Wilson, yeah, go ahead. You're going to say something?
Sorry, Nick. You mentioned there, it'd be interesting to find out what the public attitudes are towards the Gardaí today. Unfortunately, the usual suspects that have always disliked in Garda Síochána, they're still there. But the reliable, the people in the middle, the people that the Gardaí could always rely on to respect them and to assist them and to kind of to stand up for them, they're now gone too. You have an awful lot of people, an awful lot of middle-class people have no faith in the Garda Síochána, which is also should be a major concern for our government and for Garda management. There are a lot of people in the country that have no respect anymore for members of Garda Síochána. Now I know respect has to be earned. Respect shouldn't be automatically given.
Or let me say another thing then. In addition to sharing this, of course, leave your comments. And I mean, the comment section under some of these videos, some of them are, they garner a lot of interaction. People like to leave their thoughts and opinions under these videos. So in relation to this one, same thing applies. I'm asking you, the listener, right now. Obviously, you don't have to give a real name. Some people use, screen names and one thing and another. Where do you stand with regards to respect and faith in Garda Síochána to date? Leave me your thoughts and comments below. Good, bad, or ugly. We want to know. So I'll throw that out there for people anyway, John. And like I said, in the meantime, I appreciate you hopping on this morning. That's John Wilson. I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media. Over and out.